Joining us tonight to break down the race, Chris Wallace, Brit Hume, Dana Perino, and Juan Williams. Chris, we haven't heard from you yet. Let's start with you on this election result.
Well, look, this is a big win for the Democrats. They went all in. They had a major get-out-the-vote effort when you started seeing people like Deval Patrick and Cory Booker going down there this last weekend to try to mobilize the African-American vote when President Obama, former Vice President Biden made robocalls over the weekend. They were really going all in. They realized they had a once-in-a-generation chance to win a Senate seat in Alabama, and they went for it. And it's significant, obviously. A two-vote majority has been pretty tough to govern with in the Senate. Now it's going to be a one-vote majority, 51-49. On the other hand, I've got to tell you, I talked to some top officials, even in the Trump administration, who weren't sure. Yes, they wanted the vote. They wanted more to win, but they also feared the burden that he would put on the party. They look back at Todd Akin, who made the comments about legitimate rape as a Republican candidate for the Senate in Missouri in 2012, and that was a kind of poster boy for the Republicans running in that election. They worried about Roy Moore and that it would just be a constant burden, albatross, that they would have to deal with, and that every time a senator walked down a corridor, what do you think about Roy Moore? What's going to happen in the ethics investigation? Are you going to vote to expel him? So on the one hand, yes, they'd rather have won than lost. But on the other hand, they also thought that Roy Moore in the Senate was going to be a real burden for them in what promises to be a tough midterm election in 2018.
Let's bring in Brit Hume. Brit, do you agree that perhaps a Roy Moore victory would not have been worth it for the GOP?
Well, that was why I've been saying all along, Martha, that there were two bullets aimed at the Senate Republicans tonight, and the question was which one would hit them. Well, the one that hit them is the one that cost them a seat. But as Chris has ably suggested, a Moore win would have been no bed of roses either. So I totally agree with that assessment. And I would add one more thought for everyone, and that is, what does this mean for the great Steve Bannon, a man we've been given to believe was a master political strategist? He would like everyone to think that he's the man whose wisdom got Donald Trump elected, although Donald Trump obviously doesn't like to hear that. But he went down and he really did go all in for Roy Moore. And this is a state where it's very hard for Republicans to lose, and his man lost, and he lost as a result of the fact that enough people in Alabama thought enough of what those women said about Roy Moore that they didn't want him as their senator, and that is the result tonight. So it remains to be seen how this will affect the standing of Steve Bannon, who is, we thought was a pretty big player outside the White House.
Britt,
Maybe
quickly,
not.
you covered the last Democrat, Hal Heflin, to win in Alabama. It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been quite a long time. I remember Hal Heflin well, and of course, Hal Heflin, while he was a Democrat, was of a Democratic breed that no longer really exists. Hal Heflin was pretty conservative on a lot of issues, and he wasn't somebody that the Democratic leadership could always count on. I think looking at Roy Moore's record, he will be pretty much a down-the-line vote for the things the Democratic leadership really wants. I mean, Doug Jones. I'm sorry. Yes, of course. So I think this is not somebody that the Republicans will be easily able to win over. On the other hand, it seems fair to say that from day one, he will be among the most vulnerable Democrats in the Senate the next time around.
Dana, what does this say about sexual harassment charges? Roy Moore was one of the few that we've seen in recent weeks who actually tried to fight it, who said that they're not true, these allegations are false, and he lost.
Right. So I think that based on what we've heard from our voter analysis and then also just from the outcome is that his denials were not credible enough. But also I think that we're in an era of political disruption. So nobody thought that Trump could win at the beginning in that June of 2015. He's our president. A Democrat hasn't been elected in Alabama in 25 years. This is also, I think, just a very specific circumstance. Without these allegations, I think Roy Moore would definitely be the senator from Alabama instead of Jones. I think that one thing to look at is the turnout pattern similar to that in Virginia gubernatorial race that happened just last month, in which Ed Gillespie, the Republican, lost big time in Virginia. And one of those things to look at is that President Trump in Virginia won married women by 10 points. Ed Gillespie lost it by, or only won it by 1 point, and he lost so big there. That said, the 2018 map for the Republicans in the Senate is very, very good. I think that they will retain the majority. They also think that they have a possible couple of pickup opportunities, like in Missouri and Indiana. They're worried a little bit about Nevada. Tennessee, they're pretty sure about Tennessee, but they've got a strong candidate, the Democrats do, in Phil Bredesen. One thing we know for sure, while McConnell's position had been to always support the incumbents, there's going to be a lot of focus on candidate recruitment, the quality of candidates going forward, and you can bet that 2018 will be a very expensive race. Yeah.
Juan.
Well, you know, to me, this is a red state, and everybody's going to talk about Jones and the appeals of the Democrats, even Charles Barkley, the basketball superstar who went to Auburn, who was in there last night campaigning for Jones. But what strikes me is picking up on what Dana was talking about, which is suburban Republicans, especially women, who, according to all that we can see tonight, outside of Birmingham, even outside of Montgomery, were quick to decide either to stay home or to vote for Jones. This is a surprise. And this suggests that this argument, some call it a civil war within the Republican ranks, is really at a boiling point. And that's why Steve Bannon is such an important player here. Remember, Steve Bannon just persuaded the president to back Roy Moore. The president had backed Luther Strange. And it was Steve Bannon who was taking on the Senate Majority Leader of the Republican Party, Mitch McConnell. And I believe just recently said there's a special place in hell for people who are Republicans who did not back Roy Moore. So what we have here now going into 18 is, yes, it is a good landscape for Republicans because they have more seats that they're holding while Democrats have more seats that are open. But to my mind, what you're looking at is Democrats anticipating a wave in the midterms of 2018 and thinking that this is more evidence that Donald Trump and Steve Bannon are hurting the Republican Party. Not anything that Democrats are doing, because I don't think Democrats have a strong message or even strong candidates in many places. It's what's going on within the Republican Party and how Republicans, especially Republican women, feel about the party at this moment.
You acknowledge that this race was unique in the sense that it had to do a lot with these allegations. It didn't have to do with the Trump agenda. If you put the Trump agenda up in an election in Alabama, it would be an overwhelming win.
But here's the thing. So if Trump backed Luther Strange should have won over Roy Moore. Instead, Steve Bannon backed Roy Moore, and Roy Moore beat the Trump candidate. Then Steve Bannon's calling the Oval Office and saying to the president, you made a mistake. Jared Kushner misled you. You should be backing Roy Moore. He's the populist, and you're a populist president. This is, to quote Martha, the guy who's going to discombobulate, shake up the establishment. And look what happened tonight.
It's going to be interesting to see the fallout here.